Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak. So I think it's good to follow on from Ron, because we see that BT Passive with a TCOSI system are a long way to where we need to be with Energiesprong in the UK, because this actually is an example of a retrofit to net zero energy standards in the Netherlands. Same house on the left-hand side, transformed through off-site manufactured panels, a new roof which was craned in with solar PV mounted on top. And which one would you rather live in? So that's probably the same question Ron is asking you. Unless you're a classic car collector, I would suggest probably with the one on the right-hand side. And it's really transforming the appeal of the building. And I think that's what my message is about. We need to create desirable, warm and affordable homes for life. And that means we need to move out of sustainability and energy being a niche for us to operate in, into making a lifestyle choice to be really appealing to consumers, to wanting to live in the right-hand property rather than left-hand one. So the curbside appeal, the quality product, the lifestyle choice that we each make, and the value uplift that we can capture is really at the heart of this, to create a market space in which BT Passive and some of their peer competitors can operate. And so therefore we need to completely transform how we commission retrofit in this country, because at present what we see is that housing providers, the owner-occupiers, specify technical detail to which then comes an industry partner with a price point, and very often that results in disaster, because it doesn't come together that we're fixing a price point and ask for quality from industry, who are the ones who've got the deep knowledge to tackle the house to really deliver an energy performance assured product. So we started Energiesprong UK about a year ago, and those are our founder members, which includes BT Passive and the other names which are on here. So we are very, very strongly pursuing the idea of partnership and collaboration between housing providers. We're using the social housing sector as a catalyst and industry to develop new solutions to create a market that will work and transform how we do retrofit in the UK. So what is Energiesprong? There was supposed to be a very short video which doesn't seem to work on this IT here, but if you want to Google it on YouTube you will find it, because it's a really nice short movie which explains how Energiesprong works and what it does. But basically Energiesprong UK is a market transformation program. So we're not working for industry or for housing providers, we're working with industry and with housing providers to develop new solutions to create a market which works on performance-based procurement for energy efficient retrofit at scale. So we need to really come to a volume that allows industry to invest in innovation, and that will then drive an industrial approach to a whole house retrofit. So we're looking at improved insulation, fabric first, that's the obvious one, on-site renewable generation, that's the second in line. Storage was already mentioned with battery and BT Passive systems as well, but also look at reduced consumption. What can we do with consumer units? So for example, doing a kitchen bathroom refit at the same time might make sense from an energy perspective. So the parameters for success, there are only 4 of them, so it will be easy for industry to meet them. The first 3 are those that prevent us from doing good quality retrofits to date, because we don't have any assurance on the quality. We do retrofits and we hope for the best. What we need to have is a 30-year performance warranty on the energy performance of the property in place. So that's the assured quality that we need. We need it to be non-intrusive. We can't afford to decant tenants and move out for 26 weeks or even longer. So we need to do it in a week on site with tenants in situ. It's quite entertaining actually to engage with the tenants during that period as well. The Dutch implementation have now reduced that installation time to 1 day. Again, go onto YouTube, there's a video showing you leave in the morning for work, you come back in the evening, you've got a new house. We need it to be affordable. So that's absolutely critical. We can't depend on any grant finance. It needs to be a commercial business case at the core of this. Ron already referred to the value uplift, but we also need to look at what are we saving if you're not investing in piecemeal measures over a 30-year period of time. What if we aggregate that and invest once for really good performance warranted quality? But the 4th parameter of success, that's probably the most important one for me, which is design quality. Energiesprong is all about a cool, desirable product. So make your neighbours jealous. If you live in an Energiesprong, people will come knocking on your door saying, where can I get one of those? That's how we change and transform the market. So the design quality is very important, not just of the individual property, but of entire streetscapes as well. So we've got a real opportunity to transform communities and to transform neighbourhoods as well, and therefore pushing retrofit out of the niche market into mainstream business decision. where to start? I think looking at the UK construction companies, there are some exemptions, but we're not even on the left-hand side picture there because of very, very much manual labour. We don't quite understand what we do. And then we've got the Google Glass picture with a nice lady on the right-hand side, my perfect picture. We need to start somewhere. We need to really have a vision and say, if we pursue the piecemeal measures, we will never ever get to meet our carbon emission targets. We'll never ever come up with a commercial business case, because even if you improve a property to SEP 80 or so, it's still a negative business case because you're not recovering the investment from that. So we really need to jump ahead, and that's what Energiesprong is about. It's really making that leap into the future and say we need to get to net zero in one go. How do we do that? Performance-based procurement is at the heart of this. So we need to educate both industry and housing providers to ask for a different product. So move away from technical specification. Housing providers don't necessarily have the technical expertise to specify a retrofit project so it works and delivers the performance that we need. Industry has, and also I think it pushes the risk to those that understand what they are doing, and also that means that you can innovate if you're looking at the whole house solution because you are in charge of your product. Whatever you do, whether it's the enveloping of the TCOSIS system or something which is similar, you are in charge of assuring the quality of that property. So it really gives the freedom to innovate. How do we do that? So there are fixed energy requirements basically for space heating, 21 degrees guaranteed temperature for living rooms, 18 for bedrooms. There is an allowance for hot water for the household that lives in that property, and then there is energy allowance for all the appliances that tenants run. So it's about 200 litres of hot water per day, give or take for 2-3 bedroom property, terrace property, and then 2,500 kilowatt hours of electricity for tenants to use. And very importantly, and Ron again already majored on that, was the indoor air climate and comfort levels. So that includes ventilation, CO2 concentration, overheating issues, daylight requirements, noise, very important. What we've seen in the Netherlands was they managed to address all the energy challenges. They really delivered that, and then the air source heat pump was a bit too loud for people. So we really need to look at noise comfort levels as well. So therefore we are asking for a very, very new product, net zero energy, performance warranted for 30 years for a fixed price point. There's no restriction on technical solution design, which really drives innovation forward. So it's not one Energiesprong system, it's a concept that we're asking for, a new product. How does it work for the tenants or for the residents? The reason why I speak more about tenants is that we use the social housing sector as a catalyst, so therefore the business model is aimed at addressing also the split incentive between the landlord investing and the tenant benefiting. What the tenants are given is a defined energy bundle. So from my perspective, that provides a much fairer approach to total cost of living, because you might rent a property in the social housing sector, rents are fixed, so the same rent applies whether your property is performing to better standards or not, and therefore your energy bills might be twice as high as somebody else paying the same social rent. So that's not fair in my view. So we look at providing a total cost of living approach with a monthly fixed cost for the energy bundle. If you think about mobile phone bundles, we all get used to that. So we've got a gigabyte data allowance, free text messaging, and so many minutes of voice calls. And we do the same. Free space heating, you get your hot water allowance and your electricity allowance for your appliances. For that you pay a fixed monthly price. If you exceed that price, you pay for the excess. If you don't, you still pay the monthly fee. So that really overcomes the issue of behavioural change, because if the solution performs, but the tenant changes their behaviour by consuming more energy, they still pay for the excess of that energy. So therefore monitoring, evaluation of the data is very important so that we can attribute any excess in consumption to either an underperformance in a technical solution or in change in behaviour. So that safeguards the investment from the housing provider's perspective. Can it be done is the question. These are 3 examples of the Netherlands from the same solution provider. They started with the first prototype on the left-hand side, took them 2 weeks to install on site. Second one took them 1 week to install. The third one is the one which you can see the video of, which was done in a day. The third version cost 30% less than the first version. All of that was done in the space of 18 months. That could be done in the Netherlands because there was a volume deal put onto the market where industry realized it's a huge market opportunity. If we invest now, it's a huge growth opportunity for retrofit to make it work. So I think we've already seen in Ron's presentation some of the ideas around externalizing the maintenance and therefore all the appliances that you need to run. We've got the same example here where in this sort of black box all the technology is contained, which can be externally accessed for maintenance purposes. That's been improved on the middle picture already, just the box above the entrance, and on the left-hand side, sorry, going through chairs, all the technology is now included in this shaft on the outside, which has been manufactured off-site. And now there are sort of big global companies coming into this space saying we can actually produce this energy pot and just provide it to a solution provider if they want to use ours for a fixed price point. So how is it financed, you'll be asking, because it's very important that we've got a commercial business case. This one's the business model for the social housing provider addressing the split incentive. So we've got a UK business model which looks at how much would social housing providers spend on planned routine maintenance works and also major repairs. I mean, what we see is there's a lot being spent over years for mediocre measures at best. So if we aggregate those over a 30-year period, because we've got guaranteed performance, you can use that as an investment. In addition to that, you generate a revenue stream from the energy plan for tenants because they pay the energy plan to the housing provider. So that determines the investment envelope for each individual unit. So these assessments are done with our housing provider partners and identify therefore the financial envelope that is available for industry to come forward and deliver that solution. That price point will vary from different properties to different properties, but we're looking at aggregating that across the different partner organizations so that we can set certain price points for a volume deal. I'll come back to explain that in a minute. What's the target market here? Because scale is critical. If you only got 10 units, forget about it. If you've got 1,000 units, forget about it. The Dutch started with 111,000 units. That's social housing. That was structured in a way that the first 1,000 units were trial projects. Learn, because I mean you can do feasibility assessment as much as you like, unless you do it on the ground and on site and learn from the first prototypes, you'll never ever be able to improve on your solution and therefore innovate. So therefore the first 1,000 prototypes in the Netherlands were learning opportunities for industry and housing providers alike, because it's new to both sectors. And also the tenant engagement, that's very important to understand what's the disruption caused to tenants, how do we engage with them as well, so it's very important. But we need to really see the scale in the market. So the next 10,000 units in the Netherlands was a hard contract between 7 housing providers and 4 construction companies, and there's a commitment from the sector then to come in with 100,000 units once the concept's proven. So in the UK we've done some analysis. This was co-funded by Innovate UK in a project, and they looked at sort of 4 different criteria: the building age, the level of disrepair, the current energy efficiency rating, and the accessibility in terms of enveloping the building, for example. And through these assessments, there were about 2.3 million properties in social tenures identified as early market opportunities and about 7 million in private homes. So there's a very, very significant market out there that we can tap into. How do we do that? Because we really need to get together and build a positive investment case, because if we can't finance it, we can't scale it up. So it's very, very critical to get the positive investment case ready. That involves sort of demand and supply side, a homeowner, housing provider, and industry and supply chain co-designing the solution. But it also involves some regulatory constraints that we have in this country. The Netherlands have their own constraints, but there are different constraints, and it involves finance. So we really need to work together to achieve that. In order to develop the business case, we start with the early demonstrators, where we accept it's not the ideal world, but we need to start with what we've got. So on demand side, we're working to compile 200 early market demonstrators. We've got 89 of those confirmed to date, so we're still working to get to the 200 number. And then a commitment 5,000 units for the next 3 years. So that's significant market opportunity for industry to come in and say, okay, housing providers are serious, and now we can invest as well. On the supply side, we're therefore asking for a unit price point of £70,000, give or take, for the first 1,000 units. That's quite challenging. Because let's not forget it includes all the energy consumption, sort of energy generation on site as well. It might need to be inclusive of battery storage, might need to include kitchen bathrooms to reduce the consumption. So that's quite a stretching target. So therefore we're saying we're not competing on price here, because the price point's fixed for the first 1,000 units. So therefore you compete on quality to meet the the outcome-based procurement requirements. You also need to provide a 30-year warranty. And that includes the maintenance, because if you are designing your product, your enveloping of the building, and you can't maintain it, all sort of things can go wrong. So therefore it needs to go hand in hand in terms of installation and maintenance over time. We want to have about 5 suppliers that can meet that price level to get going. So what we need on the finance side is project-based funding for the early market demonstrators. Again, we've been very, very successful in some European funding that we've been awarded for some early market demonstrators to just bridge the gap between what's commercially viable for the social housing provider and what's required for industry to get started. But then we need to put in place structural funding of about £250 million for a revolving loan fund for 5,000 retrofits, because one of the key differences between the Dutch market and the UK market is the cost of finance is too high in this country. So the social housing providers in this country borrow at about 4.5% if you're looking at housing associations, or even at public borrowing rates of 2.8%. In the Netherlands, that's below 2%. That makes a huge difference over a 30-year period. So we really need to think about how can we reduce the cost of finance, which could be government guarantees, could be local revolving loan funds, could also be some investment from the European Investment Bank who we are talking to. So we really need to get finance right. We also, on the regulatory side, we need to have supportive local planning control, because if you envelope building, you're extending the footprint a little bit, you might change the roof pitch a bit. That's the same starting point in the Netherlands, where when you see it, you can understand it. Until you see it, you don't quite know what's coming. So I think we really need to have some supportive local planning control for the early market demonstrators. And we also need to look at the energy service plan, because it's a new concept for the social housing sector to say to their tenants, you pay an energy service charge to us. So we need to have something which is enforceable, so we're working on that as well. But we need to get to a volume market, so for that, what do we need to do? It's basically, on the demand side, we need significant market scaling. That's the 100,000 commitment that the Dutch housing providers came up with, and that's what we need to get to, so we need to increase participation from the housing providers. I think it might become easier once we've done the early market demonstrators, because then people can come, touch, see and feel it, because we've taken out all the founder members to the Netherlands, and it's been great for them, because the question changed from why this can't be done to how it can be done. And that's a very significant step change in the mindset, because this is a challenge to organisational cultures. It's not a technical challenge at all, it can be done. It's a challenge to overcome business as usual, both in the housing sector as well as in industry. On the supply side, we really need to then focus on innovation in the supply chain, because you can drive down costs through larger amount of purchasing, but you also need to co-design. So if you think about how you build a new car, if VW brings onto a new model of a Golf or so, they just don't turn around to the supply chain and say, what kind of headlights do you happen to have on your shelves? They co-design. They say, we need you to co-design a headlamp for us that fits into our new overall design of a Golf. And that's very important. So we need to achieve a significant cost reduction. The target here is below 35k. I think the figure was mentioned with the kitchen, 18,000, no questions asked. So if you really get a whole house retrofit for 35, it becomes really, really attractive, not just for the social housing sector, but also, and that's the significant growth market for owner-occupiers. On the finance side, I think once we've proven that the concept works, it's commercially viable and the business case is there, we've got the performance warranties and insurance backing in place, we just need to have mainstream finance products available. So I think there's already a lot of interest from private financiers in this market to say, yeah, let's just test some of this and see whether we can use some of the legislation that came or was put in place with the Green Deal, where you can attach the mortgage to the property rather than the individual. So there is probably the UK is in that respect a bit more advanced than the Dutch market is, because in the Netherlands they're now thinking about establishing legislation which is very similar to what was put in place for the Green Deal, which failed for different reasons in the UK. On the regulatory side, I think what would really help the social housing sector some rent flexibilities with the financial pressures that the social housing sector is under, the rent cuts and the right to buy extension and so on. We need to really think about if we are moving towards a total cost of living approach where a tenant gets a whole cost of living basically to occupy a property, it's in the interest of the housing provider therefore to maximise the rental income and minimise the energy costs. So I think it would be much better if we would just have that one figure. So really that's our journey ahead, that we want to make that massive market scale volume work in the UK. So I mentioned the volume deal, and the 70k figure is, as I said, already a stretching target, but if you assume that's the 70k here on the price point, we'll only do a few units to just prove the concept, prove the commercial business case, prove the contracting as well, and then we need to start to drive down the cost. So we'll have different price points agreed which are attached to volume. So the more volume you do, the better it becomes in terms of the price, because you can do bulk purchasing and you can also invest in innovation. If you, as industry partner, only ever do 10 properties, you will never recover your engineering costs to get to the first one. If you do 1,000, you might just break even. If you do 5,000, you make a nice profit. So it's really that partnership approach to understand what's commercially viable and affordable to the housing provider or the owner-occupier, and how far can we push industry through the outcome-based performance. And I think it is a very, very attractive approach because the market scale is there in the UK as well as in the Netherlands. And so hopefully that's given you an idea of what we're trying to achieve with Energiesprong. I'm trying to summarize this just once more on this slide, where we sort of are asking for high-quality performance guaranteed homes. So we really want to have a good survey and solution design, because that's the beginning of the journey. We need to understand what the technical solution would look like. And when I say we, that's the role of industry, because they are in charge of the property. They also then need to provide the whole house performance guarantee, which enables the housing provider to give the energy bundle to tenants. So therefore the mobile phone equivalent, you pay a fixed monthly fee, that's it. And I think we need to move away from individual projects to product design, because the construction industry is probably the only one that hasn't moved on from project-based approaches to product design approaches. So industry really needs to take responsibility for the product that they are delivering. And I think that's really, really critical. So therefore, performance quality management is key, critical, both for industry so they can demonstrate that they've met the performance requirements, but also then going forward for the owner-occupiers to understand what they're buying. Because if you're buying a product, nobody doubts that your car will consume certain miles per gallon, or your smartphone does all sorts of things. Nobody doubts that. It's the lifestyle that appeals to us why we choose that product over something else. So we really make it attractive to everybody. And so going around in the circle again, so monitoring optimization for the next solution is very important. So start slow, just do the one, learn from it as much as you can, do the second much better, and so on and so forth. Because speed is important to get to scale, but not at the cost of price of quality compromise. Because that's important, because there's so many people heading somewhere fast, heading nowhere fast, but we need to really move towards a situation where we get the high quality performance guaranteed homes. And so that's what Energiesprong is all about, and I hope you're all ready for transformation. Thank you.